My name is Julius Walker, 34 years old, and I always thought family meant unconditional love. That belief shattered when I arrived at my sister, Amanda's wedding reception. The staff checked their list twice before delivering the blow. "Sorry, sir, your name is not here." I turned to see my mother watching from across the room, a cold smile on her face. What followed was the most painful betrayal of my life, but also the moment I finally found my worth. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to join our storytelling family. Growing up in Portland, Amanda and I shared a bond that seemed unbreakable despite our 4-year age gap. Our childhood home on Maple Street became the foundation of countless memories that defined our relationship. While other neighborhood kids built simple snowmen in winter, Amanda and I constructed elaborate snow fortresses with tunnels, rooms, and even furniture made of packed snow. I can still picture her red mittens and the way her nose turned pink from the cold as we worked side by side for hours. When Amanda turned 7, our father walked out on the family without warning. Mom fell apart, spending days in her bedroom with the curtains drawn. During those dark weeks, I took it upon myself at 11 years old to teach Amanda how to ride her bike. I remember running alongside her on the cracked sidewalk outside our house, holding the back of her seat, encouraging her with words our father should have been saying. "Keep pedaling, Manda. I won't let go until you're ready." The day she finally rode without my help, her face lit up with such pride that it momentarily erased the sadness that had settled over our home. We developed a secret language that confused even our mother. Simple words like "fruddle" meant we needed to talk privately, while "Zamboni crisis" signaled that one of us was upset but couldn't show it. This private communication became our sanctuary, a way to support each other through our mother's rotating boyfriends and financial struggles. Our weekend movie marathons were sacred. We'd build elaborate blanket forts in the living room, pop popcorn with extra butter, and watch everything from Disney classics to sci-fi adventures. During scary scenes, Amanda would grab my arm so tight it left marks, but I never complained. Being her protector gave me purpose. In middle school, when 3 girls from the 8th grade cornered Amanda in the bathroom and cut a chunk of her hair, I confronted them the next day. I didn't resort to threats or intimidation. Instead, I showed up with a petition signed by 30 students demanding the school take bullying seriously. The principal couldn't ignore the community pressure, and those girls faced actual consequences. Amanda looked at me differently after that, with a newfound respect that went beyond typical sibling affection. When college application season arrived during my senior year, Amanda spent hours helping me edit my essays despite being only 14. She had an eye for storytelling that I lacked, helping me transform mundane experiences into compelling narratives that eventually earned me a partial scholarship to Boston University. Photography became our shared passion during my high school years. I saved for months to buy Amanda her first real camera for her 13th birthday. We spent countless weekends exploring Portland with our lenses, capturing the city from angles tourists never saw. Those photos still hang in my apartment, tangible reminders of a connection I once believed would last forever. Our annual camping trips to Mount Hood were legendary within our small family. Mom never joined, claiming to hate the outdoors, so these excursions became our special tradition. Under star-filled skies, roasting marshmallows over a crackling fire, we had our most honest conversations. It was during one of these trips, when Amanda was 16 and I was 20, that she confessed her fear of ending up alone like our mother. I promised her then that no matter what happened in our lives, she would always have me. That promise was reinforced at our grandmother's funeral when I was 26 and Amanda 22. Standing by the grave, gripping hands so tight our knuckles turned white, we made a solemn vow to always protect each other. "We're all we've got now," I whispered as our mother stood apart from us, already texting someone on her phone. Even when I moved to Boston for college, our bond remained strong. I remember sitting in my cramped dorm room, laptop balanced precariously on my knees, having video calls with Amanda for hours. She would give me virtual tour of her high school, introducing me to her friends through the screen. I sent care packages filled with Boston-specific treats and photographs of my new life, always with handwritten notes reminding her that distance couldn't weaken our connection. Despite my tight budget as a college student working part-time jobs, I flew home for every significant event in Amanda's life. I surprised her at her high school graduation, hiding in the crowd until her name was called, then cheering so loudly she spotted me instantly. The look of pure joy on her face made the extra shifts I'd worked to afford the plane ticket entirely worth it. When she earned a full scholarship to University of Oregon, I took her out to her favorite restaurant and gave her a leather-bound journal for recording her college adventures. 4 years later, I returned the favor by attending her college graduation. By then, I was working as a high school English teacher in Boston, still struggling to build my savings, but I would never have missed that milestone. I stood proudly as she accepted her business degree, believing nothing could ever come between us. The first hairline crack appeared in our relationship when our mother Margaret remarried during Amanda's senior year of college. Richard Thompson was everything our father wasn't. Wealthy, consistent, and eager to play family man. While Amanda quickly embraced the country club memberships and lavish family vacations, I remained cautious. Something about Richard's practiced smile never quite reached his eyes, especially when he looked at me. "What exactly do teachers make these days?" he asked during one holiday dinner, swirling expensive bourbon in a crystal glass. "Enough," I answered simply, noticing how Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but said nothing to defend my choice of career. It was a small moment, barely noticeable, but looking back, it was the first drop of poison in our once pure relationship. Neither of us acknowledged the growing distance, both pretending that nothing had changed, but something fundamental had shifted. The ground beneath our unbreakable bond had begun to tremble, though the earthquake was still years away. The true transformation in Amanda began when she started dating Brian Fisher during her first year working at Thompson Financial, the company our stepfather conveniently owned. Brian wasn't just any colleague. His father, Walter Fisher, was Richard's most important business partner, and Brian had the confidence of someone who'd never heard the word no in his life. Our first meeting was at a dinner Richard hosted to celebrate Amanda's promotion to junior account manager. Brian arrived 45 minutes late, offering no apology as he slid into his seat. Throughout the meal, he dominated the conversation with stories of his adventures skiing in the Alps and his recent purchase of a downtown condo. When I mentioned my student's recent success at a regional writing competition, Brian cut me off. "Teaching is such a noble profession," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Someone has to shape young minds, while the rest of us shape the economy." Amanda laughed along with everyone else at the table. I searched her face for any sign of discomfort at his condescension, but found none. The sister who once stood proudly beside me, as I received a community service award for my work with underprivileged students, now seemed embarrassed by my career choice. The changes accelerated after that night. Amanda began canceling our standing monthly dinner plans with increasing frequency. Brian surprised me with tickets to the symphony, or "we're meeting Walter's business associates for drinks." Each excuse came with less notice and less remorse. Her speech patterns changed subtly at first, then more dramatically. Words like summer became summer with a vaguely European affectation. She peppered conversations with references to wines I couldn't pronounce and vacation destinations I couldn't afford. When I called her out on it during a rare lunch together, she dismissed my concerns. "I'm growing, Julius. People evolve when they enter new circles." I noticed how differently she behaved when Brian was present versus when we were alone. During a brief coffee meetup without him, glimpses of the old Amanda surfaced. She asked about my students and laughed at my jokes about Portland's hipster culture. But when Brian unexpectedly joined us, she immediately straightened her posture and lowered her voice to the hushed tone she now used in public settings. Our inside jokes were replaced by anecdotes clearly meant to impress him. The uncomfortable dinner that truly opened my eyes happened 6 months into their relationship. Brian questioned my career choice directly, no longer bothering with the thin veneer of respect. Don't you want more for yourself, Julius? Teaching high school English sounds like settling to me. A smart guy like you could be making real money in the business world. I waited for Amanda to defend me, to remind Brian of the students whose lives I'd changed, the letters I received from kids who'd gone on to college because of my encouragement. Instead, she studied her plate and said nothing. Her silence hurt more than Brian's words ever could. Later that night, I tried talking to her about the changes I was seeing. We stood in the parking lot outside the restaurant, our breath visible in the cold air. I barely recognize you when you're with him, I said gently. It's like you become a different person. Her response was immediate and defensive. You're just jealous that I'm moving up in the world, while you're stuck in the same classroom year after year. Not everyone wants a simple life, Julius. Simple. The word cut deep. My life as a teacher, mentor, and community volunteer had never felt simple to me. It was rich with purpose and connection. But in Amanda's new world, purpose apparently had a dollar value attached. Our first major argument erupted 3 months later when I questioned Brian's character, after witnessing him belittle a waiter over a minor mistake. We were celebrating Amanda's birthday at an upscale restaurant Brian had chosen. You deserve someone who treats everyone with respect, not just people he thinks are important, I told her when Brian stepped away from the table. Amanda's face flushed with anger. You don't know him like I do. He has high standards, that's all. Maybe if you had higher standards, you wouldn't be living in that tiny apartment teaching kids who probably don't even appreciate it. The words hung between us like an impenetrable wall. I excused myself before dessert arrived, leaving my gift on the table. She didn't call to thank me for the vintage camera lens I'd spent months hunting down, something the old Amanda would have treasured. After that night, Amanda began screening my calls. Our conversations, once flowing naturally for hours, became brief and superficial. Can't talk now in a meeting, her texts would say, even on weekends. I'd see social media posts of her at brunches and parties, always with Brian's arm possessively around her waist, always with the same group of polished, affluent friends who looked interchangeable to me. During the Christmas gathering at Richard and our mother's house that year, I tried sharing a story about a student who'd overcome homelessness to earn a scholarship. Amanda pretended not to hear, turning to discuss vacation properties with Brian's sister. Later, when I showed old family photos to Richard's nieces, Amanda declined to join us, suddenly needing to help our mother in the kitchen. The final blow came 6 months later, when I discovered from Instagram that Amanda had gotten engaged. The carefully staged photos showed her looking radiant, displaying a diamond ring that probably cost more than my annual salary. The caption thanked friends and family for sharing the special moment. I wasn't there. I hadn't even known it was happening. Through those difficult months, my childhood friend Tyler became my emotional lifeline. We'd grown up 3 houses apart, and though our paths diverged after high school, we'd maintained a solid friendship. Tyler now worked as a producer at the local news station in Portland, having built a successful career in media. She's caught up in a world that values appearance over substance, Tyler said during one of our late-night phone calls after I discovered the engagement news. This isn't about you, Julius. It's about her insecurities. At Tyler's suggestion, I began seeing Dr. Rivera, a therapist specializing in family dynamics. During our weekly sessions, I gained valuable insights into the patterns playing out in my family. Your mother appears to be using Amanda to fulfill her own social climbing ambitions, Dr. Rivera explained during one particularly illuminating session. And Amanda, seeking maternal approval she never received as a child, is following the path of least resistance. Understanding the dynamics intellectually helped, but it didn't ease the emotional pain of watching my sister transform into someone I barely recognized. The sister who once stood beside me against the world was gone, replaced by a carefully constructed version designed to fit into Brian's world. And somehow in that world, there was no longer room for a high school English teacher from Boston, even if he was her only brother. The engagement announcement marked the beginning of a new phase of exclusion that grew increasingly painful as wedding preparations progressed. 3 weeks after seeing the Instagram post, I received a text from Amanda with a link to her engagement photos. No personal message, just the link. When I called to congratulate her, the conversation lasted less than 2 minutes before she claimed she needed to take another call. A month later, I discovered through my mother's Facebook page that an engagement party had been held at the Fisher family's lake house. The photos showed 50 or more guests in cocktail attire, champagne flutes raised in celebration. My mother looked radiant beside Richard, clearly thriving in the sophisticated setting. Amanda glowed with happiness, surrounded by her new social circle. I stared at those photos for hours, searching for any hint that someone had noticed my absence. When I finally worked up the courage to ask Amanda about not being invited, her response was casual, as if the oversight was trivial. It was just close friends and important family, Julius. Nothing formal. Richard's business associates made up most of the guest list. You wouldn't have known anyone. Important family. The words echoed in my head for days. Had I been relegated to unimportant family status without realizing it? I made several attempts to involve myself in the wedding preparations, offering to help with anything they needed. I could design the programs, I suggested during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations. Or help coordinate with vendors since you're so busy with work. Each offer was met with vague appreciation, but no follow-up. That's sweet, but Brian's mother has a wedding planner handling everything. Or, we've got it covered, but thanks for offering. The dismissals were always polite but firm. Then came the dress shopping expedition I learned about through another social media post. My mother, Amanda, Brian's mother and sisters, and several bridesmaids spent a Saturday at an exclusive bridal boutique, sipping champagne while Amanda tried on designer gowns. The caption under my mother's post read, "So blessed to share this special day with all the important women in Amanda's life." The irony of me, her only sibling, not even being informed of the event wasn't lost on me. The bachelor and bachelorette weekend trips to Napa Valley were similarly organized without my knowledge. I only learned about them after they happened, through photos posted by attendants I didn't recognize. When I asked Amanda directly why I wasn't included in the bachelor party at least, she seemed genuinely confused by the question. It was really just Brian's fraternity brothers and some colleagues. Richard went because of his connection to Brian's father. You wouldn't have fit in with that crowd. My attempts to connect with her became increasingly desperate. I sent thoughtful texts asking about wedding details, hoping to at least stay informed about the planning process. Her responses were brief and impersonal. Going with roses and peonies, 7 bridesmaids, seafood or steak options. No elaboration, no questions about my life in return. Then came the family dinner 6 months before the wedding date. Richard and my mother hosted a wedding planning session at their home. I only learned about it because Tyler saw my mother at the grocery store buying ingredients for the meal and mentioned it to me, assuming I'd be attending. When I called my mother to ask about the dinner, she seemed flustered. "Oh, I thought Amanda would have told you. It's really just for people directly involved in the ceremony planning." I attended anyway, bringing a bottle of wine and putting on a brave face. For 3 excruciating hours, I sat at a table while everyone discussed details of the event as if I weren't there. They debated ceremony readings, music selections, and reception seating without once asking for my input. When I offered a suggestion about a song that had special meaning to Amanda and me from our childhood, my mother quickly interjected. "Amanda and Brian want a sophisticated ambience, Julius. Children's songs don't really fit the tone they're going for." It wasn't a children's song. It was What a Wonderful World, which we danced to at our grandmother's 70th birthday celebration. Amanda knew this but remained silent, examining her engagement ring as if seeing it for the first time. Throughout the evening, I learned that relatives I barely knew were involved in significant aspects of the wedding. Our second cousin Tiffany was coordinating the bridal shower. Our mother's college roommate was helping select the wedding invitations. Even Richard's administrative assistant had been asked to manage the gift registry. Meanwhile, I wasn't even sure if I was in the wedding party. As the dinner concluded, Amanda approached me with the first request she'd made in months. Julius, we're putting together a slideshow of family photos for the reception. Since you're the photographer in the family, could you help compile some good childhood pictures of us? Nothing too informal, though. Elegant family moments would be best. A task. Not a role, not an honor, but a task she needed completed. Still, I eagerly agreed, pathetically grateful for any way to contribute to my only sister's wedding. Of course. I can put together the whole presentation if you want. I could set it to music, make it really special. That would be great, she replied, already looking past me toward Brian, who was motioning for her to join him. Just don't make a big deal about it, okay? Send whatever you put together to Mom's assistant for approval before the wedding. That night, while searching through my email for old family photos I'd digitized years earlier, I accidentally opened a message thread I'd been copied on by mistake. The subject line read, "Finalized seating chart and vendor assignments." Scrolling through the exchange between my mother, Amanda, and the wedding planner, I found a comment that stopped my heart. "We'll put Julius at the back near the service entrance, since he'll need to manage the slideshow. He's basically just a vendor helping with technical aspects, so no need for him at the family tables." My mother's response: "Perfect solution. This way he's included without disrupting the aesthetic we've worked so hard to create." I stared at those words until my vision blurred. Vendor. Not brother of the bride. Not family. Vendor. The truth I'd been avoiding for months finally crystallized with perfect clarity. In my sister's new life, I had been demoted from beloved brother to unpaid service provider. The stress of this ongoing rejection began affecting my work life. My principal noticed my lesson plans lacked their usual creativity. Students commented that I seemed distracted during discussions. My colleague Sophia Wu, who taught in the classroom next to mine, stopped me in the hallway one afternoon. "Whatever's going on in your personal life is consuming you, Julius. I can see it eating you from the inside." Sophia became an unexpected source of support. Unlike my family, she valued my perspective and appreciated my dedication to teaching. Over coffee after school, I found myself sharing the whole painful story. "Your family is missing out on the best person I know," she said with such conviction that I almost believed her. "Maybe it's time to focus on the people who actually see your worth." Taking her advice, I poured myself into a special photography project with my advanced placement students. We created a series documenting unseen heroes in our community, from hospice nurses to homeless shelter volunteers. The project gave me purpose outside my family drama and reminded me that value isn't measured by social status or wealth. As my students' passion for the project grew, my obsession with Amanda's wedding proportionally diminished. I was finding my center again, one class period at a time. Yet the wedding date loomed, and with it, the final test of where I truly stood in my sister's life. Despite everything, I clung to a thread of hope that the actual day might bring reconciliation. Perhaps seeing me there would remind Amanda of our shared history, of promises made under starlit skies, and the unbreakable bond we once claimed would last forever. I couldn't have been more wrong. The morning of Amanda's wedding dawned clear and unseasonably warm for Portland in May. I stood in front of my hotel mirror, adjusting my tie, a knot forming in my stomach that had nothing to do with the breakfast I'd skipped. Despite months of exclusion, I'd spent weeks preparing a thoughtful slideshow chronicling our journey from snow fort architects to adults. Each photo was carefully selected to highlight our connection without overshadowing the bride's special day. Next to my laptop sat a carefully wrapped package containing my gift, a handmade leather album filled with restored photos of our grandparents and parents, extending back 3 generations. Family history that I thought Amanda would want to pass down someday. I'd spent nearly $2,000 having the oldest photos professionally restored, money I'd been saving for a much-needed new car. I arrived at the vineyard early, driving through rolling hills covered with meticulously maintained grapevines. The venue was breathtaking, A renovated barn with soaring ceilings and exposed wooden beams, surrounded by flowering gardens and mountain views. Crystal chandeliers hung from the rafters, and white roses cascaded from every available surface. The extravagance made my gift feel suddenly inadequate. As I approached the reception check-in desk with my slideshow and gift, the staff member greeted me with a professional smile. "Name, please." "Julius Walker. I'm the bride's brother." Her smile faltered as she scanned her tablet. "I don't see that name on our list." "Let me check again." Her fingers moved across the screen with increasing discomfort. "Walker. Walker. I'm sorry, sir. You're not on the guest list." "There must be a mistake," I said, feeling heat rise to my face as guests behind me began to notice the holdup. "I'm Amanda Walker's brother. Julius Walker." The young woman looked genuinely distressed. "Sir, I've checked 3 times. Your name isn't here. Let me get the coordinator." As we stood there, I noticed my mother approaching from across the elegantly decorated entryway. She wore an expensive-looking silver dress and carried herself with the confidence of someone who belonged in this setting. Her face showed no surprise at my predicament. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew exactly what was happening. "Mom, they're saying I'm not on the guest list. Can you clear this up?" The coordinator arrived, tablet in hand, looking between us nervously. My mother placed a manicured hand on the woman's arm. "It's fine, Kendra. I'll handle this," then turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Julius, could we speak privately?" She guided me to a quiet corner of the entryway, away from curious onlookers but still visible from the main reception area. Through the large windows, I could see guests in formal attire being seated for the ceremony in the garden. The surreal quality of the moment made me feel like I was watching someone else's life unfold. "Julius," my mother began, her voice carrying the practiced patience she used when explaining unpleasant realities. "Did you really think you were invited to the ceremony and reception? After all the drama you've caused with your disapproval of Brian?" The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What are you talking about? I'm her brother, her only sibling. This is Amanda's special day." The guest list was carefully curated to include people who support her relationship and fit with the environment the Fishers want to create. She adjusted her diamond bracelet as she spoke. "Strangers aren't allowed at this private ceremony." "Strangers?" The word hit like a physical blow. "I'm not a stranger. I'm her brother. Family is more than blood, Julius. It's about who makes an effort to belong. Richard's associates have been more present in Amanda's life these past 2 years than you have, flying in from Boston for occasional visits." I struggled to form words through the tightness in my throat. "I'm here for the slideshow. You asked me to create it." "Yes, and we appreciate that. You can drop it off with Kendra. The AV team will handle the technical aspects." She glanced over my shoulder, her attention already elsewhere. "If you'd like to wait in the staff area, you can make sure they set it up correctly. But the ceremony and reception are invitation only." Across the room, I caught sight of Amanda in a side chamber where the bridal party was gathering. Our eyes met briefly through the partially open door. For a moment, I thought I saw regret flash across her face. Then Brian whispered something in her ear, and she quickly looked away, closing the door more firmly. I became acutely aware of the physical sensations of this betrayal. My heart raced painfully against my ribs. My chest felt so tight, I struggled to draw a full breath. Heat rushed to my face while my hands turned cold. The elegant surroundings blurred at the edges of my vision as I fought to maintain composure. Brian's father, Walter, passed nearby, giving me a dismissive glance before joining a group of distinguished-looking men near the bar. From across the room, I caught Brian watching the interaction with my mother, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. This wasn't just exclusion. It was a public humiliation, carefully orchestrated to put me in my place. I stood alone in the busy entryway, clutching my gift and the flash drive containing hours of work. Guests streamed past me toward the ceremony space, some giving curious glances at the man who clearly didn't belong. I had a choice to make: create a scene that would only validate their perception of me as an unwelcome disruption, or leave with whatever dignity I could salvage. For a moment, I considered simply walking away, disappearing from Amanda's life as thoroughly as she had erased me from her wedding. But something inside me, perhaps the last remnant of the brother who had taught her to ride a bike when no one else would, refused to leave without marking this moment. I walked back to where my mother stood directing staff about flower arrangements. She looked annoyed at my continued presence. Before she could dismiss me again, I spoke calmly, loud enough for nearby guests to hear but not so loud as to create a scene. If family is about who makes an effort to belong, then I've failed by your new standards. But remember this, Mom. I was family when no one else was there. When Dad left and you couldn't get out of bed for weeks, I was 12 years old making sure Amanda ate breakfast before school. I was family when you missed her high school graduation for a date. I placed the wrapped album on a nearby table. Tell Amanda this is from a stranger who once loved her more than anything. I'll honor your wishes now. Then I'll live like a stranger. The wedding coordinator standing nearby looked profoundly uncomfortable, her professional mask slipping to reveal genuine sympathy. Several guests pretended not to listen while clearly absorbing every word. "Julius, don't be dramatic," my mother hissed, glancing anxiously at the onlookers. "I'm not being dramatic," I replied with a calm I didn't feel. "I'm just finally accepting what you've been trying to tell me for 2 years. I don't belong in Amanda's new life, and that's okay. I wish her happiness." With that, I walked calmly toward the exit, leaving behind both the slideshow and gift. Each step felt like moving through water, but I kept my head high, refusing to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me break. In the parking lot, I sat in my rental car, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. For 10 full minutes, I stared at the vineyard entrance, part of me still hoping Amanda would come running out, explaining that this was all a terrible misunderstanding. She never came. As I started the engine, I made a decision that would change everything. I wouldn't cause a scene at her wedding. I wouldn't crash the reception or make tearful pleas. But I wouldn't slink away in shame either. There was another way to respond to this rejection, one that would allow me to reclaim my own narrative while letting Amanda have her perfect day. I pulled out my phone and called Tyler. "Remember that contingency plan we discussed?" "It's time." Tyler answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting for my call. "Tell me what happened," he said without preamble. Sitting in my rental car in the vineyard parking lot, I recounted the humiliating interaction with clinical detachment. As I spoke, the initial shock gave way to a clarity I hadn't experienced in months. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation. This was the culmination of a systematic campaign to erase me from my sister's narrative. "So what do you want to do?" Tyler asked when I finished. "We can still go with the original plan, or you can walk away completely. Your choice." I watched another group of well-dressed guests arrive, greeting each other with air kisses and practiced laughter. Activate everything. Not to hurt Amanda, but to reclaim my own story. The plan Tyler and I had developed wasn't vengeful or petty. It was something far more powerful. An alternative narrative built on authenticity rather than appearances. For months, sensing the wedding invitation might never materialize, I had been quietly laying groundwork for this moment. "I'll make the calls right now," Tyler confirmed. "The exhibition space is already set up. The station will send a crew within the hour." While most people would have focused solely on the wedding slide, I had prepared for this rejection by creating something meaningful that stood in direct contrast to the superficial world that had seduced my sister. The student photography exhibition I'd organized was scheduled to open that evening at the Portland Community Arts Center. The timing wasn't coincidental. Tyler worked at the local news station as a producer, and he had already arranged for my students' Unseen Heroes photography exhibition to be featured on the evening news. The segment was intended to highlight how art could give voice to overlooked community members while teaching students valuable skills. Now it would also serve as my response to being labeled a vendor at my own sister's wedding. "What about the RSVP redirection?" I asked, referring to another aspect of our contingency plan. "Already programmed," Tyler assured me. "Any RSVPs for tonight's exhibition will forward directly to your mother's phone. The system's set to send a new notification every time someone responds." This wasn't about disrupting Amanda's wedding. The notifications would be subtle, just persistent enough to create an undercurrent of awareness throughout the day. The content wouldn't be anything inflammatory, simply information about a community arts event happening concurrently with her exclusive celebration. The fundraiser was the final piece of our plan. Months earlier, I'd begun organizing a scholarship in my grandmother's name, specifically designed to benefit students from broken families. The timing of the public launch was deliberately scheduled for Amanda's wedding day, not out of spite, but because I'd initially hoped to announce it at the reception as my gift to her, honoring our grandmother's memory on this significant family occasion. Now the scholarship would launch independently, backed by local businesses I'd built relationships with throughout my teaching career. The initial fundraising goal of $10,000 was modest, but meaningful, enough to help one deserving student attend community college for a year. As I pulled away from the vineyard, Tyler called back. "Everything's in motion." The local business association just issued their press release supporting the scholarship. The Arts Center director is thrilled about the extra publicity. "And Julius, KPNW wants to interview you live during their evening broadcast about the exhibition and fundraiser." "Perfect," I replied, feeling neither vindictive nor sad but purposeful. This wasn't about revenge. It was about redirecting my energy toward something constructive rather than dwelling on rejection. I drove directly to the Portland Community Arts Center, where my former students had already begun hanging their photographs. The exhibition space hummed with youthful energy as 20 teenagers carefully positioned their work, each image telling the story of someone whose contributions to society often went unrecognized. The elderly volunteer who read to hospital patients, the janitor who left encouraging notes on classroom desks, the lunch lady who secretly paid for children's meals when their accounts ran dry. While helping a sophomore adjust the lighting on her photograph of a hospice nurse, my phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "First wave of RSVPs coming in. Your mother's phone should be starting to notify her now." I checked my watch. The wedding ceremony would be starting soon. I imagined the elegant procession, the string quartet playing as Amanda walked down the aisle on Richard's arm. I felt a momentary pang of sadness not for missing the event, but for the sister I had lost long before today. Meanwhile, across town at the vineyard, the meticulously planned wedding ceremony commenced. What neither Amanda nor my mother could have anticipated was how quickly information travels in the digital age, especially when guided by someone who knows the local media landscape intimately. By the time Amanda and Brian were exchanging vows, the first notifications would have begun appearing on my mother's phone. Nothing dramatic, just a steady stream of alerts about RSVPs to the evening's exhibition. The phone would be silenced for the ceremony, of course, but the screen would illuminate with each new message. A small, persistent reminder that I wasn't simply disappearing as planned. Tyler had arranged for several local business owners to announce their support for the scholarship fund on social media simultaneously, creating a mini-viral moment in Portland's community. These weren't celebrity endorsements, but something more valuable in a close-knit city. Authentic support from respected local figures. The scholarship fund just hit $2,000 in donations, Tyler reported by mid-afternoon. People are sharing it with comments about how it contrasts with the lavish wedding happening today. That wasn't planned, but it's gaining traction. I hadn't asked anyone to make that comparison. The power of the response lay in its authenticity. People naturally contrasted the community-focused fundraiser with the exclusive wedding, once they learned the backstory from friends and social connections. As the wedding reception would be beginning, Amanda's college friends, unaware of how complete her transformation had been, began messaging her about my event. Several had already donated to the scholarship, assuming Amanda would be proud of her brother's initiative. Their confusion at discovering I wasn't even invited to the wedding created exactly the kind of genuine questioning I had hoped for. The wedding photographer, a well-respected professional in Portland's relatively small creative community, recognized my name when someone mentioned the exhibition. Julius Walker, the teacher whose photography won the Regional Arts Education Award last year. That's the bride's brother. The subtle shift in his tone suggested surprise that such a connection wasn't being celebrated rather than hidden. By late afternoon, several of Richard's business associates had seen the announcements about the scholarship fund, which prominently featured my story of resilience despite family challenges. The narrative wasn't accusatory or bitter, simply truthful. A teacher creating opportunity for students who, like himself, knew what it meant to feel disconnected from family support. My mother's attempts to silence her phone would have been futile, as the notifications continued throughout the reception. Text messages from mutual friends, alerts about donations to the scholarship fund, RSVPs to the exhibition, and eventually, calls from local media asking for comment on my community initiative. The wedding reception is underway, but I've heard from a server friend that guests are discussing your exhibition, Tyler reported. Apparently someone showed Brian's mother the online article about the scholarship, and she asked Amanda why her brother was hosting a major community event instead of attending her wedding. I didn't respond to this information with satisfaction or glee. Instead, I focused on the students preparing for their exhibition opening, helping them practice talking about their work and the importance of recognizing unsung heroes. Their excitement about being featured on the evening news was contagious, their pride in creating something meaningful palpable. Around 5 o'clock, Tyler arrived at the Arts Center with a news crew. "Ready for your interview?" he asked. "Remember, this isn't about the wedding. This is about the project, the students, and the scholarship." As the camera rolled, I spoke passionately about the power of photography to validate overlooked experiences and the importance of creating opportunities for students from challenging family backgrounds. I never mentioned Amanda or the wedding directly. I didn't need to. The power of the contrast spoke for itself. While one Walker sibling celebrated with Portland's elite, the other stood surrounded by students whose lives he'd helped transform. The local newspaper called my mother's phone during the father-daughter dance, the reporter seeking comment on the inspiring initiative launched by your son today. I imagined her face as she silenced yet another call, the perfect wedding narrative she'd constructed beginning to compete with an alternative story she couldn't control. As evening fell, guests began arriving at the exhibition opening. Not the social elite who populated Amanda's wedding, but a diverse crowd of students, parents, educators, and community members genuinely interested in the photographs and the stories they told. The energy in the room was warm and inclusive, a stark contrast to the exclusive atmosphere I'd briefly witnessed at the vineyard. What had begun as a response to rejection had transformed into something far more meaningful. A community gathering that celebrated authentic connection over superficial status. And as more wedding guests discovered the parallel event through social media and conversations, the carefully constructed narrative of Amanda's perfect day developed an unplanned subplot that no amount of expensive planning could erase. The wedding reception continued at the vineyard with its carefully orchestrated timeline of events. First dances, champagne toasts, gourmet dinner service. Yet beneath the surface perfection, questions began circulating among guests who had caught wind of the competing narrative unfolding across town. "Did you see that article about Amanda's brother?" One guest whispered to another over centerpieces that cost more than a month's rent in most Portland neighborhoods. "He's hosting some kind of charity event tonight." I thought it was strange. He wasn't in any of the family photos. Amanda's college roommate, Sarah, who had remained close to both of us over the years, was particularly confused by my absence. She had assumed I would be giving a toast or walking Amanda down the aisle alongside Richard. When she overheard discussions about the photography exhibition, she pulled out her phone to investigate. The local news station's website featured a prominently placed article about the student exhibition and scholarship fund, complete with quotes from me about the importance of creating family-like support systems for students who lack traditional family structures. The irony wasn't subtle, though I had never explicitly connected it to Amanda's wedding. Sarah approached Amanda during a brief moment when she wasn't surrounded by Brian's family or business associates. "Julius is hosting a major community event tonight, and he's not even here. What happened between you two?" Amanda's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her flush of discomfort. "It's complicated, Sarah. He doesn't really fit with our lives anymore. He chose not to be part of this." "That doesn't sound like the Julius I know," Sarah replied, her expression skeptical. "The one who flew cross-country for your college graduation when he could barely afford rent." Before Amanda could respond, Brian appeared at her elbow, his timing suspiciously perfect. "Darling, my father wants us to meet the Andersons. They just flew in from Zurich." He nodded curtly to Sarah before guiding Amanda away, effectively ending the uncomfortable conversation. But Sarah wasn't easily dismissed. Back at her table, she sent me a text. "Just found out you're not at the wedding." "What the hell, Julius? Calling you now." When I stepped away from the exhibition to take her call, Sarah's voice was a mixture of confusion and outrage. "I'm at this ridiculous wedding watching Amanda pretend everything is perfect, but you're not even here. She told me you chose not to be part of this, what actually happened." I gave her the unvarnished truth, not to generate sympathy, but because Sarah deserved honesty after flying across the country to celebrate with both Walker siblings, only to find one conspicuously absent. As I explained the morning's events and the months of exclusion leading up to them, Sarah's gasps of disbelief were audible even over the exhibition's background noise. "This is unrecognizable behavior," she said finally. "The Amanda I knew in college would never treat you this way. She used to brag about her amazing brother to everyone who would listen." "People change," I replied, working to keep bitterness from my voice. "Her priorities shifted." "Well, my priorities haven't," Sarah stated firmly. "I came to celebrate with both of you. If you're not welcome there, then neither am I." 20 minutes later, Sarah arrived at the exhibition with 3 other friends from Amanda's university days. Their small act of solidarity didn't go unnoticed by the local news crew still filming at the event. When the reporter approached them for comments, Sarah didn't hold back. "We flew across the country to celebrate with Amanda and her brother Julius, who we've all known for years. Finding out he wasn't even invited to his own sister's wedding was shocking. After seeing the amazing community work he's doing, we decided this is where we needed to be tonight." The reporter, sensing a compelling human interest angle, asked follow-up questions that Sarah and the others answered with candid disappointment about the situation. Their genuine emotional responses created the kind of authentic television moment that no amount of careful public relations could counteract. Back at the wedding reception, the consequences of this unplanned publicity began rippling through the carefully curated guest list. Amanda's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from friends who had seen Sarah on the local news or read about the situation online. The pristine facade of family perfection the Fishers and my mother had constructed was developing noticeable cracks. Brian's father, Walter, hyper-aware of public perception, pulled Richard aside for a tense conversation near the bar. Their body language suggested concern about how the competing narrative might affect their business image. Richard's family had presented themselves as paragons of traditional values, making the exclusion of the bride's only sibling potentially problematic for their carefully maintained public persona. My mother's phone rang during Amanda's first dance with Brian. The caller ID displayed Mayor's office, a call she wouldn't dare ignore given Richard's business interests with the city. Stepping away from the dance floor, she answered to discover Mayor Patterson calling not about Richard's pending development proposal, but to congratulate me on the scholarship program. "Margaret, I just left your son's student exhibition. What an impressive initiative. The scholarship for students from broken homes is exactly the kind of community support we need. Richard must be very proud to have Julius as his stepson. I'm surprised he's not here showcasing this as part of the family's community involvement." My mother's stammered response about me being tied up with other commitments rang hollow even to her own ears. The mayor's subtle emphasis on family obligations and community values wasn't lost on her. In Portland's interconnected business and political landscape, such impressions mattered. As the evening progressed, Amanda's wedding night transformed from the social triumph she had envisioned into something more complicated. Between dances and cake cutting, she found herself explaining my absence repeatedly, each explanation sounding less convincing than the last. Julius had a prior commitment with his students. We wanted a very intimate family gathering. He lives in Boston, so it was difficult for him to be involved. None of these explanations satisfied guests who had already seen the news coverage or social media posts about the local teacher hosting a major community event on the same night, particularly when that teacher was identifiably the bride's only sibling. Brian's reaction to the developing situation revealed aspects of his character that Amanda had previously overlooked. Rather than showing concern for her obvious distress, he became increasingly irritated by the unwanted attention to my absence. "This is exactly why we didn't want him involved," he muttered during a rare private moment. "Always has to make everything about him and his do-gooder projects." For perhaps the first time, Amanda heard the contempt in his voice without the filter of infatuation. The contrast between Brian's dismissive attitude and the genuine community support rallying around my project created cognitive dissonance she couldn't easily resolve. By the time Amanda and Brian departed for their hotel, the social media narrative had shifted significantly. What began as wedding hashtags and congratulatory posts had evolved into discussions about authentic family values versus social climbing, with pointed comments about the irony of excluding the one Walker family member actively supporting the community. Brian's father made his concerns explicitly clear during a tense conversation with Richard while guests were departing. "This doesn't look good, Richard. Your stepson has half the city singing his praises for community service, while he's conspicuously absent from his sister's wedding. People are asking questions that could affect our development proposal with the city." The wedding night that Amanda had dreamed about since childhood ended with her scrolling through social media in her hotel room, watching in real time as the narrative of her perfect day competed with the story of her brother's community project and the questions about her family values that it naturally raised. Several messages from Sarah and other college friends lay unanswered on her phone, their questions too direct to address while maintaining the fiction she had helped create. For the first time since aligning herself with Brian's world, Amanda experienced genuine doubt about the choices that had led her to this moment of hollow victory. Meanwhile, at the exhibition closing, I accepted a symbolic check from the Portland Business Association for the scholarship fund, which had surpassed its initial goal by several $1,000s. The spontaneous standing ovation from the gathered community wasn't planned or orchestrated. It was an authentic recognition that left me momentarily speechless with emotion. "This isn't about me," I finally said into the microphone. "This is about creating the kind of supportive family we all deserve, whether it comes from blood relations or the communities we build ourselves." I didn't need to mention Amanda or the wedding directly. The contrast between our separate events that evening spoke volumes. One celebrated wealth and status within an exclusive circle. The other celebrated connection and support within an inclusive community. Both revealed fundamental truths about what we truly valued. As I helped students and volunteers clean up the exhibition space late that night, Tyler showed me the evening news segment that had aired. The juxtaposition of footage from both events told a story no amount of careful public relations could control. A story about choices, values, and what truly constitutes family. "You okay?" Tyler asked as we turned off the gallery lights. "Better than I expected," I answered truthfully. Today clarified things that needed clarifying. The day had indeed brought painful clarity. The sister I had protected and loved throughout childhood had chosen a path that excluded me entirely. That knowledge hurt deeply, but the day had also demonstrated that family could be found beyond blood relations, in the authentic connections we build through shared values and mutual respect. That knowledge offered a different kind of hope, one based not on wishful thinking but on demonstrated reality. In the days following Amanda's wedding and my exhibition, I focused entirely on the positive impact of the scholarship project rather than dwelling on family drama. Students from the exhibition received local recognition, with several earning internship offers from professional photographers impressed by their work. The scholarship fund continued growing as the story spread throughout Portland's community networks. These tangible outcomes provided a healthy focus for my energy and emotions. 2 weeks after returning to Boston, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment. Sarah, Amanda's college roommate, had detoured from a business trip to New York specifically to see me. Over coffee at my kitchen table, she provided insights into Amanda's situation that I hadn't been able to see clearly from my position of hurt. "Brian and your mother have been systematically manipulating Amanda's perception of you for years," Sarah explained, stirring her coffee absently. "After every visit or phone call with you, your mother would point out ways you supposedly looked down on Amanda's choices or didn't fit with her new life." "And Amanda believed that?" I asked, struggling to reconcile this with the sister who once knew me better than anyone. "It was subtle and consistent. They'd highlight any small comment you made that could be interpreted as judgment. Remember when you questioned whether Amanda really needed a new luxury car? Your mother reframed that as you believing Amanda didn't deserve nice things because she worked in finance instead of teaching." Sarah detailed how my mother's lifelong pattern of social climbing had found its perfect expression through Amanda. Having failed to secure lasting status through her own multiple marriages, she had pinned her aspirations on Amanda's relationship with Brian. My continued presence as the middle-class teacher brother complicated the narrative of affluence and social importance she was constructing. "Brian's similar," Sarah continued. "He needs constant validation of his lifestyle choices. Your career working with underprivileged students implicitly questions his values, even when you say nothing directly critical. Your very existence as her brother creates cognitive dissonance." This explanation didn't excuse Amanda's behavior, but it helped me understand the toxic dynamic that had ensnared her. My sister hadn't simply become shallow overnight. She had been gradually conditioned to prioritize appearances and status over authentic connection, with my mother as the primary architect of this transformation. Rather than immediately confronting Amanda or exposing more family secrets, I chose a path of dignified distance. I sent a simple email to Amanda acknowledging that, while I missed the sister I once knew, I respected her right to choose her own path. I expressed hope that someday we might rebuild some form of relationship, but made it clear I would no longer chase after inclusion in her life. The scholarship program became an annual tradition, helping dozens of students over the following years. Each recipient shared something in common with me. They understood what it meant to feel disconnected from family support, yet refused to let that define their potential. Working with these students provided healing in ways therapy alone never could. I built a chosen family of friends, colleagues, and students who valued me authentically. Sophia from work became particularly important in my life, our friendship gradually evolving into something deeper based on mutual respect and shared values. Unlike my blood relatives, she saw my dedication to teaching not as a curious choice to be explained away, but as an admirable commitment worthy of support. 6 months after the wedding, Amanda reached out with a tentative text message. "Can we talk?" I learned later that her picture-perfect marriage was already showing stress fractures. Brian's charm had diminished significantly once he secured the merger of families his father wanted, and Amanda was discovering that social status provided little comfort in an emotionally barren relationship. Our first conversation was awkward and brief, but it opened a door that had been firmly closed. I maintained healthy boundaries, making it clear that while I remained open to reconciliation, it would require acknowledgement of the hurt caused and genuine change, not simply reaching out when her new support system proved less fulfilling than expected. "I got caught between Mom's expectations and my conscience," Amanda admitted during a longer phone call several weeks later. "Somewhere along the way, I started believing that belonging in Brian's world was more important than anything else. Including you. And now, I asked, careful to keep accusation from my voice. Her silence spoke volumes before she finally answered. Now I'm not sure what I believe anymore. But I miss my brother. The process of rebuilding trust has been slow and remains incomplete. Some wounds heal but leave permanent scars. Yet the experience taught me profound lessons about family, identity, and resilience that I might never have learned otherwise. I discovered that while blood ties are powerful, they're not obligations to accept mistreatment. True family stands by you without requiring you to diminish yourself to fit their narrative. Sometimes the healthiest love we can offer family members who harm us is the space to experience the consequences of their choices. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that pain can either embitter us or enlighten us. The choice isn't in whether we feel hurt, some betrayals cut too deep to ignore, but in what we do with that hurt afterward. I chose to channel mine into creating opportunities for others facing similar rejection, transforming personal pain into community healing. During our most recent conversation, I shared this perspective with Amanda gently but firmly. When you and Mom decided I wasn't good enough for your wedding, it hurt more than I can express. But that pain showed me the difference between people who love me for status versus those who love me for substance. I won't apologize for building a life that values the latter. Amanda was quiet for a long moment before responding. I envy that clarity. I'm still trying to figure out who I am without Mom's approval or Brian's validation. That's the hardest work there is, I told her. But it's the only work that matters in the end. Today, my life looks nothing like I imagined when Amanda and I made childhood promises under starlit skies. The unbreakable bond we pledged has been severely tested, perhaps irreparably changed. Yet I've found peace in knowing I acted with integrity throughout our painful journey. I've created a life rich with genuine connections, leaving the door neither fully closed nor fully open to my biological family. The truth I've embraced is simple yet profound. Family is ultimately defined by actions, not shared DNA. Some blood relatives may never truly see or value us, while people with no biological connection may provide the unconditional acceptance we all deserve. Recognizing the difference isn't admitting defeat, it's claiming the power to define family on our own terms. Have you ever faced a similar betrayal from someone you thought would always be in your corner? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength through life's most challenging moments. Remember, sometimes the family we create matters more than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening, and until next time, take care of your authentic self and those who truly value you.